Okay, let's take a look. It says, now let's put some recent numbers into context. So this was a couple years ago when Donald Trump first became president. He was asking for $5 billion for the border wall. Okay, so a lot of people didn't understand what was going on. They didn't understand what was going on. They just, when he was elected, they were chanting, build that wall, build that wall, build that wall. Okay, so the problem was what they said they were doing, and this is from him. He said that rapists and murderers are coming across the border. Okay, so he was essentially equating illegal immigration with crossing across the border, and his solution was to build a border wall. He was saying, build a wall and they will stop coming over. Okay, I don't care if you agree with the wall or not. What I care with is I want you to see the problem, and I want you to be an analytical thinker. You have a problem, and the problem is to stop these quote-unquote rapists and murderers from coming across the border. I do not agree with this at all. I don't think they're rapers. I don't think they're murderers. I don't agree with this at all in any way, shape, or form. I do not condone it. But I'm saying, imagine you were in a position where you were told you have to stop these people from coming across the border. So that's your goal. And you have a budget of $5 billion because that's what Donald Trump wanted. Donald Trump wanted $5 billion to solve his problem that he thought was the problem. In his solution, he was going to use $5 billion. So now that you have a context with how big a billion is, or in this case, 5 billion, what I wanted you to do was explore, is there other ways we could solve the same problem, which in this case is stopping people from crossing the border? I don't care if you think that's right or wrong. Is there a better way to spend $5 billion to stop this? And I thought about this problem, and I thought about this solution as I drove across the border going to Rocky Point, Mexico. When I went to Rocky Point, Mexico, I noticed on the border, which I go every year, multiple times a year, hopefully, if it's a good year, I see that there's already a border wall. And the wall doesn't scare me. The men and women with machine guns scare me. When you see an armed officer sitting there with an assault rifle in their hands, that's what makes me stop, pay attention to what I'm doing, and go slow. I'm not doing anything illegal, but that is what intimidates me, and that is what would stop me. So my thought was, what if we took that $5 billion and instead of building a wall which people can climb over, dig under, or cut through, or heck, even in the news recently, found out that the wall just blew over from the wind, what if we invested that 5 billion people and created jobs for more Border Patrol agents? So my thought at investigating a solution was take the $5 billion for a wall and instead invest it in human capital, in people, and have the people guard the border instead of a fence. What could you do with $5 billion? So that's what we're going to explore in F and G, the next two problems in this packet. What if we took $5 billion and invested in people? How far would it go? And I am not saying that's the best solution. I'm saying it's a different solution. A different solution. Would it be more effective? How many people could we employ? How far would these people be apart if we did employ them? So I came up with some thoughts, I came up with some parameters, and we're going to work through that. So I just want to step back, and I encourage you, do more investigation about this $5 billion for the border wall. This $5 billion turned into an extreme political debate. The Democrats, who were in the House, had control of the House, not the Senate, would not approve a budget that had money for the border wall. And the Republicans wanted to give Donald Trump his money. What ended up happening was a stalemate. The Democrats wouldn't sign off on it, so the Republicans, which have to get it passed through the House and Senate, the budget through the House and the Senate, could not get this budget passed. So they could not pass a budget that had this money for the president for his border wall. So what happened? President Trump shut the government down. And he shut the government down for a couple months. This is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employees who had to sit at home for a couple months, much like they are on COVID right now. Sit at home for a couple months without paychecks, without work, without anything. Think about trying to raise kids and having to support them and pay your rent and your car payment and food and gas and electric and everything. And all of a sudden you don't have a job. This happened for a couple of months to the United States, all because Donald Trump wanted his $5 billion for the border wall and they wouldn't give it to him. So, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I am talking facts. This is what actually happened. So was the $5 billion worth fighting about? And is a $5 billion wall the best way that we could invest it? Further investigation. What I did was I looked up what were the plans for the wall. What were the estimations for the wall? Well, Donald Trump is the man who came up with the number $5 billion. It was not any architect that said $5 billion. It wasn't any reasonable engineer that said $5 billion. It was Donald Trump that said $5 billion will do it. Well, first, to be clear, he said Mexico would pay for the wall. Mexico stuck up their middle finger and said, no, we're not. So then Donald Trump said $5 billion will do it. Of course, this is taxpayer monies. This is the American people paying it. When you go and you look at what did the engineers say for the wall, what did the engineers and architects say it would cost? They were coming in at estimates over $20 billion with annual maintenance in the tens of millions of dollars. So Donald Trump said $5 billion, but I want you to keep in the back of your mind the actual cost of completing this wall is going to be closer to $20 billion if it ever comes to fruition. Insane amounts of money. So we're just going to look at the $5 billion. We know it should be more. We're going to think about this from the problem-solving technique of we need to stop people from crossing the border. Again, I don't care if you agree with it or not. That is the problem. Stop people from crossing the border. Donald Trump's solution, build a $5 billion wall. My solution that I want to investigate is instead invest in people. Put people on the wall, Border Patrol agents. So I looked even further in it, and I looked at how long's the U.S.-Mexico border. Google it. And I got approximately 2,000 miles. And then when I looked into the plans from the wall, I realized what I thought was, I'm thinking like Great Wall of China here, like it goes from one end of the connection between the U.S. and Mexico to the other, and it's just a straight wall, and that's what I'm envisioning in my mind. And then I read about it, and I realized that no, he actually only wants to build a wall in 550 miles of that entire stretch. So it's not even the full 2,000 miles. It's only about a quarter of the border that he needs to cover, because the rest of it is desolate. It's desert. There's no way for people to survive and no way for them to travel through the border in those other miles. So it's only 550 miles that we need to cover. So we are going to put pedestrians, in this exercise. How many people could we put across that 550 miles? Okay, so that's enough context. Sorry for rambling on. I just want you guys to understand the problem and how serious these numbers are. So it says, now let's put some recent numbers into context. President Donald Trump is asking for over $5 billion to create 550 miles of wall along the nearly 2,000-mile border between the U.S. and Mexico. Assume each Border Patrol agent made $75,000 a year. Again, that really good salary, right? Border Patrol agents would be happy to make that kind of money. And we want to employ them for their full working career of 30 years. So we're going to say each one of these Border Patrol agents works for 30 years, then they're able to retire. So it says, how many Border Patrol employees could be employed for 30 years at a rate of $5 billion requested? So what was my idea here? My idea was, if you build a wall, that wall's going to last for many years. So if we're going to say use people instead of a wall, we need those people to work that wall for a very long time. So how long would a wall last and how long do people last? And I just said, how about, let's come up with 30 years. So we're going to have a wall that's effective for 30 years. We're going to have people that are effective for 30 years. So we're not just employing someone for 1 year, we are employing them for 30 years. We are going to have this wall. We're going to use this $5 billion, and we are going to cover that wall for the next 30 years. So the question becomes, how many Border Patrol agents could we hire at $75,000 a year? Really, really good salary there. So let's look at this money here. We start off with $5 billion, the amount that Donald Trump asked for. Ended up taking, by the way, I don't know if it was legal or not, but ended up using emergency funds and taking money for building his wall, which still isn't built. But what we know is that each one of these agents is going to make $75,000 for 1 year, and that it's 30 years for one, I'm going to call it agent. Okay? So this right here, the dollars are going away, the years are going to go away. This is going to tell me how many agents I could provide for 30 years to cover the border. I'm getting approximately 2,222 agents. So that's how many agents I can handle or hire. I have 2,222 agents. They are going to guard that 550 miles of border for the next 30 years. Okay. So now I want you to take a step back and I want you to think about guarding that border. When you guard the border, you can't just guard the border from 9 to 5 because then everyone would come across at 6 p.m., right? So you have to have someone stationed on the border at that post 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we need these 2,222 people are going to work the wall, but some of them have to work a morning shift, some an afternoon shift, and some a night shift, right? So we need different shifts. And we need that border, or each station, pretend that there's a station there where these guards are going to go to, and they're going to stand there with their machine guns, right? That station needs to be manned. Each station needs to be manned or womaned, personed, agent. They need an agent there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for 30 years. So the question then becomes, okay, we have 2,222 people. We're going to station them across this 550 miles. We're going to station them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 30 years. How many stations could we then have? And that's what the next one's getting at. And then when you know how many stations you can have, we have 550 miles, so how far can we space away those stations? So the first thing we're going to do is find out how many stations could we actually get where we could man that station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Okay? And then how far do we have to space them to cover the 550 miles? So that's what Part G is getting at. It says, presume we want to secure the border with Border Patrol agents instead of a wall and decide to build stations for these Border Patrol agents to stay on watch. We want each of these stations manned every hour of every day. There are 168 hours in a week, and I just did 7 times 24 to get the 168 hours a week. And it says each Border Patrol employee works 40 hours a week. How far apart would we have to place stations if we wanted to have every station manned every hour of every day for 30 years using the $5 billion? So the first thing I want to ask is how many stations? So how are we going to do that? To find out how many stations, let's find out how many people, well, let's use how many people we have. So we have 2,222 agents. Right? Those agents are employed 40 hours a week. So one agent works 40 hours a week. And then what we have is one station needs 168 hours of protection. So that station needs to be manned all 168 hours of the week. So we have 2,222 agents. One agent works 40 hours. One station takes 168 hours, so that's going to give us our number of stations we can have. So how many stations can we have? I'm getting a number of, please put that in your calculator, 529 stations. So we could have 529 stations manned every hour of every day for 30 years. So let's think about step 2, how far apart? Well, remember, how many miles do we have? We have 550 miles that we need to cover. How many stations do we have? We have 529 stations. So what do we get? Well, if we do the 550 miles divided by the 529 stations, we get approximately, go ahead and put that into your calculator, 550 divided by 524. I'm getting about 1.04 or 1.05. We could put a station approximately every single mile across that 550 miles that he wants, the border. Absolutely insane here, right? So imagine, would you rather have an armed officer every single mile across the border, every single hour of every single day for 30 years, or would you rather build a wall, again, that can be climbed over, cut through, dug under, or even blows over in the wind, like happened for real, not a joke? Which one of those is more effective? Would you rather invest in people, or would you rather invest in a mall? Or a wall. I said a mall yet again. Okay? So, again, not a political argument. I don't care if you agree with the statement or not. I don't care if you agree with a wall or not. What I want you to do is I want you to think $5 billion, and this isn't the government's money, it is our money because it is tax money. $5 billion. Could have we spent $5 billion more effectively? If you believe the solution is stopping people across the border, is there a more effective way to spend $5 billion? And I hope this exercise made you think. You look at some conversions, you look at mathematics, you're looking at big numbers here. Are there other solutions? My answer would be yes, there's much better solutions. We could use technology, humans, and maybe walls in some cases, barricade something, but a combination of everything rather than build the wall. Whether you agree, support the president or not, whether you think immigration is a problem or not, the mathematics is undeniable. $5 billion is a huge amount. So let's continue on the packet and do some more, less realistic, more interesting, fun, light-hearted examples. We'll take a step away from these real depressing numbers. I do want you to look into some of the new COVID numbers. What numbers are we talking about there with hundreds of thousands, over 100,000 dead already, trillions of dollars in debts. I hope this gives you some more perspective on some real current world events for you.